So what are some of the monumental myths and mistakes that are commonly made by many business leaders when identifying and integrating the core values of their business? So the first one I would say is quite a broad one. It's the lack of awareness of the key principles of axiology. Now, a lot of people, when I say the word axiology, aren't even sure what that means. Axiology is the study of values. And it's something I've immersed myself in for 16 years now. I was taught by a guy called Dr. John Demartini, who I consider to be the world's leading authority in axiology. And please get his book. I strongly recommend that, which is called The Values Factor, if you really want to know more about values. A basic example of this lack of understanding can be found in, for example, not understanding that the value that your business provides your customers comes from its values. And when you can understand that link, and it's quite profound when it sounds simplistic, but it's very profound when you get into it. So that's just one. Another one is understanding when you elicit the values of either an individual or a business as a collective, that you have to do it in a way where you're focusing on what the activities of that individual, that business reflect. So you've got to look at reality rather than conjecture. So these are some of the key principles that you find within axiology that are often overlooked. The second monumental myth and mistake that I find is around culture. So again, axiology tells us this, that a culture is a collection of values, and your core values determine your culture, if you're looking at a business, and the culture of your business determines the attitudes of the people within the business. And in the words of a dear old friend of mine, attitude is everything. So it's pretty fundamental to get a handle on individual values, and then as those individuals come together, the collective values. Okay, so this is another mistake I often seen made, is people go straight to the collective values of the business and overlook the individual values. Big mistake. Number 3 is lack of engagement when identifying core values. And this means quite often the people at the top of the business, the CEO, the owners, the founders, they bestow these values upon everyone else and tell everyone else what the values are, and haven't engaged the other stakeholders. I've seen this many times in businesses where there's already been a set of values mapped out before I've arrived, and I've gone and spoken with the team members, and quite often they don't know what the values are, but when they do, they're not inspired by them at all. And they weren't engaged in the process of identifying those values. Even people who've been in the business for a long time were not engaged. So it's critical that this engagement happens, because you get ownership of the values, and you also get to make sure that people are inspired by them. And inspiration is what we're really looking for here. Okay, number 4, another monumental mistake that I've found many times is people have moralistically stated values. So let me give you an example of how that works. Not long ago I was speaking to a group of 20 entrepreneurs, and I asked them, who here values honesty? And 20 hands out of 20 went up, not a surprise. And I then said, who here values integrity? And again, not surprisingly, 20 hands out of 20 went up. So I then said to them, what has that told us about your businesses or about you as individuals? And the answer was nothing. So on a practical level, they don't work. Now, I'm not saying you can never use language like honesty and integrity within your values. They can be put in there, but they've got to be very contextual and very specific. Otherwise, they're meaningless. Now, the other thing is that they can also cause issues, because if you're saying honesty, well, who's honest 100% of the time in everything they do? If somebody out there says, I am, then you're lying, okay? So there are other complications I haven't got time to get into in this video, but all I can say is that you try and avoid moralistically stated values. It's a big no-no. The fifth mistake comes in two parts, but it's about what I call aspirational values. And when you're looking to transform the culture of a business, it's really important to understand these two types of aspirational values. So type 1 is what I call external aspirational values, and these are core values that are identified and pursued from an external source. So it may be a business that your business knows and you like, oh, you know, like Apple, wow the customer. And well, if it's a group of, you know, coders, if it's a coding company and their job is to wow their customer, it could be true, but maybe not. You know, but the thing they've got to ask themselves, is it a value they admire, or is it authentic? And it's all about how much evidence is there of this value being demonstrated. So if it was wowing the customer, if I then contacted some of their customers randomly and said, do they wow you? If their customers laughed and said, well, no, they're very reliable, but they don't wow us, then obviously that is an external aspirational value. It's not authentic. The other side of this is what we call inner aspirational values. And these are different. These are the ones you can use to transform culture, but there has to be some evidence of them within the business. You have to have a starting point with those. So otherwise there's no authenticity at all. So if there's some evidence, but they're not strong within the business, there is a linking process that we can go through where you can ramp up those values and how they're demonstrated within the business. And that's a really cool transformational process that some businesses choose to go through. Now, just in very brief summary, these are just the top 5 monumental myths and mistakes. So number 1 is that there is a lack of awareness of the key principles of axiology. Number 2 is that a culture is a collection of values, and you have to engage everyone, and you have to look at individual values as well as collective values when people come together. Number 3 is that people at the top of the business must engage everyone, all the stakeholders, when identifying the authentic core values of the business. Number 4 is to avoid, as far as possible, moralistically stated values. There are some exceptions, as I said, but you've got to give strong context. And number 5 is, when using aspirational values, really understand the difference between external aspirational values and, you know, which one of my clients calls fake values, and inner aspirational values. I hope that's been useful. Thank you.